Hello friends, happy Halloween. Today we're going to look at a map from a very recent set called Lost Civilization by Jaakko Impola, a Finnish mapper who I don't think has done anything else other than this. The Jaska is his handle. And this map is the 10th map from the set. It's called Nightmare, and I felt like it was very appropriate for Halloween. So this is one of those like I don't want to say story maps, but like there's like scripted events or whatever you want to call like the Doom approximation of scripted events. Here we have these. There's the landscape in shadow. There's a bunch of these voodoo doll characters that you can hurt yourself if you shoot them. There's these weird moving objects, I presume set up through some sort of conveyor belt thing, and then those appearing Hell Knights. I'm not sure what the text at the beginning says here. It says something like I can't remember, but whatever. Doesn't really matter. It's subliminal messaging, I guess. You don't really need to know what it says, I suppose. I like how those Hell Knights come flying in here. Yeah, that's really funny. So this map is part of a larger set. It's kind of a weird outlier to a larger set called Lost Civilization, which it looks kind of like this actually. There are tons of these like textures that are oftentimes like made by people in the community or ripped from other games. You can find like a billion texture compilations like this, and the sense of like realism in the environment is really intense. There's a lot of environmental detail, and the maps are generally very big. This map is an exception. It's kind of like a narrative map. You can see that this hallway is changing back and forth between this like regal thing to like dripping blood and like fiery skies and all that kind of stuff. Now I'm being shot out here through some sort of conveyor belt. So this is one of those like you get teleported very quickly to different areas kinds of maps. So there is ostensibly a story to this set, but it's not anything like Alt or something like that where each of the levels kind of tells its own facet of the narrative. This is really the only map that's like this. So most of the maps of this set are very, very big, very, very detailed, open-ended exploratory maps. And I played through this set actually, it's like right before coronavirus. So I have an association with playing it in like January and February, but like the maps are quite big. This will take you a long time. This apparently took the designer Jaska 3 years to make, and I think this might have been his only Doom set, so this is something that was definitely fussed over a lot. And if you are interested in big non-linear exploratory maps with like very high detail sort of settings that are kind of intended to be some kind of like realistic setting but something that's crumbling, but of course it's like Doom textures, but the amount of detail put into the architecture and all that kind of stuff using all these textures imported, default textures imported from other games, all that kind of stuff creates a kind of vibe and mood which is very much this kind of Lost Civilizations vibe, which I think is really interesting. Right here, so you can see I pistol started this map, and I was really worried that it wasn't designed for it. But this map is actually quite light on combat compared to a lot of the other maps, and I feel like it's almost designed for a pistol start because there's a lot of there's an encounter that you'll see in a second that'll come up on here after this hallway where there's several Barons of Hell sort of tracking me down, and there's no way to get by them, and I thought I was just like screwed because I didn't have any weaponry. And then they, like, after dying a bunch of times. So I played this map before, but it was a while ago, so I didn't rehearse before playing this, so I wasn't sure, exactly. I didn't remember exactly how things go. The guys like teleport like right before they reach the center sort of platform. So you're supposed to just dodge their projectiles and wait until you're about to die, and then they teleport away, which I didn't know, but I thought it was very clever when I found that out. Here I'm just gonna try and dodge a cyber demon. It's kind of, so sometimes when I play through sets, like I warp around to just random maps and try and, you know, pistol start them not knowing anything and just try and see as much as I can before I die. And this is the perfect kind of map for that, where it's like, I don't want to fight anything. I just want to see like what this map is, to see if it's something that I would have any interest in. And yeah, this is a perfect map for that because it's not very heavy on combat at all, and it pretty clearly telegraphs when there is combat. I'm a little sad that actually the rest of the set, a lot of the levels are very moody. They have a very cool vibe, but none of the other ones that I remember have like this kind of narrative framing exactly. It's much more just kind of, I don't want to say chill because it does get pretty hard at the end. There were some moments that I found frustrating, but generally it's a pretty just open-ended, like chill for Doom kind of vibe for a lot of the maps. I mean, it's still, the levels are still difficult, but you know what I mean. Like, that's generally the vibe. It's not really slaughter maps. There are a handful of maps that kind of approach slaughter territory, but it's more about the vibe and the open-ended kind of exploration, this kind of, you know, all the work that went into the detail of the textures, or not the textures themselves, but, you know, the architecture and the way that the textures were used, which, like I said, all these textures, most of them ripped from other games or other things, textures that random people made. There's like, you know, a billion texture packs you can download, you know, if you're in the Doom community, and a lot of sets I'll often find will be cobbled together from various things just because they're trying to create a different vibe. That's kind of what I like about it. It's like you don't need to be really great at art directing, like, and making your own textures. You could just like try and cobble together what you can find and make it something like a little unique here. Yeah, here's a little interesting setup. I guess I need to shoot those switches in order to get through. More voodoo dolls appear here that I guess a face damaging from me. Yeah, and those cyber demons just mysteriously died. So sometimes you'll see like the screen just flash red, like I get damaged, and I don't know why, like right there. That's because the voodoo dolls are getting damaged. Here's the part with the barons that are tracking me down. So this is really the most of the level here is in this section. All that kind of narrative, whatever you want to call it, like thematic stuff was built up to this. But yeah, here I'm waiting. I have to wait for those guys because they'll spawn in once I get past a certain point. I have to stand in the center and wait for these guys to come in, and then they'll be teleported out once they get to a certain point. But I'm trying to dodge them right now because I'm like, oh, I guess you have to get by them, but there's just no way to do that. It's impossible. So I was really freaked out for a sec. Yeah, there are a few points in this map. I think the problem with anything where you try and design something so open-ended, and, you know, just the general design principles of Doom, is it can be hard to telegraph stuff because you have just limited gameplay conveyances, and, you know, like, there's just limited ways you can convey, like, go this way outside of, like, you know, I guess you can put an arrow or something like that. But, you know, like, if you're doing more complicated kind of scripting type stuff, which this is, I'm pretty sure this is Z-Doom only. I'm playing in GZ Doom. So I, at the very least, it's Boom, because there was some, you know, voodoo doll and, fucking treadmill effects. But yeah, it can be difficult, and like I said, the bigger that you make a map, the more kind of just sectors and stuff that you draw out, the more details that you draw out, the more lighting effects and stuff you do, the harder it can be to see, oh, I need to go here, I need to go there. So I guess it's a good and bad thing. It's a blessing and a curse, because it's like, I do like playing Doom sets, and something like this set in particular, because of how open-ended it is, but that can also be a curse when you're like, you just at that point of the level where you just really need to move on, and you're stuck at this one place, and you just need to hit this one switch, or you didn't know that you needed to do, this one thing, and you just kind of bang your head against it over and over again. I guess that's the drawback to that. But anyway, I finally figured this out. So yeah, so this is obviously telegraphed to be like a pistol start sort of level, because they just handed me a shotgun, and now the level is saying, I expect you to fight. This room, this gives you a good idea of what the vibe of a lot of levels are, like interiors to the sort of castle levels in this set are. This set is 22 maps, by the way, but it's a very big 22 maps. It definitely feels like a full megawatt. I don't even think I finished it, because it just kind of got too hard. It kind of got slaughtery a little bit. Just very dense, lots of enemies, very, very big environments. I got pretty close to finishing it, though. But yeah, and just like all the nice like curtains. It's all like kind of cheesy, textures, but the way that they're used, it creates a vibe. That's something I really like. But it's also like, it's definitely contemporary modern Doom. It's not like the Doom that you think, the Doom. This is kind of in like having a bunch of old castles and wandering through them, and like old sort of lost villas or whatever, things like that. It is kind of going for a vibe that something like Eternal Doom does, but because, it's taking advantage of newer features, it's taking advantage of presumably Z-Doom, just Doom Builder, all that kind of stuff, increased limitations. It's just a completely different scale. Like, it's so much bigger and so much more kind of... I don't even want to say representational, because it kind of is in some ways, but kind of not. But there's just so much more detail. It's so much more dense, which can obscure some of the gameplay stuff. I think this set is designed pretty well, but I wouldn't say that there's anything that like really stands out to me as like that I thought was like really, really good design. It's more that it just works with the environment most of the time. This map, again, I guess is a little bit of an exception. So yeah, I'm wandering down these hallways. Gradually, different things will open up, and what I'm supposed to do is sort of like that. I played a map from Alt, where you have to walk over this little thing to activate, and you have to activate a certain number of them in order to exit the level. So that's basically what I'm doing here. I really love all the vines and stuff covering these areas. So up to this point in this set, you played, and it's been like mostly just castles and stuff like that. There hasn't been anything overtly kind of like trying to mess with you psychologically. There haven't been tons of like... It's very aesthetically pretty, but it's not necessarily a spooky set. So when this map comes in, it's a little bit jarring, which I kind of like. But presumably that's the effect that it's kind of going off of here. Well, I hope you all have a good Halloween, by the way. Most of us, I guess, are stuck at home. Yeah, I don't know what to say in terms of this the Halloween-y vibe, because Doom is kind of all Halloween in a way, like cacodemons. There's what is more like Halloween looking than a freaking cacodemon? Yeah, so here the map is starting to introduce higher tier monsters, so I have to be a little more careful. But as you notice, like, I mean, I've had to dodge some monsters and stuff up to this point, but at this point, it hands out ammo sparingly, but it's like just enough to get through. It's not throwing a bunch of hit scanners at me, that are out of reach of me or something, like I'll be able to pick up that ammunition from these like chain gunners and stuff that I'm killing. But I have to be very conscious because I'm playing most of this map on low health. And this has hurt me plenty because I just didn't, I don't know, I'm pistol starting and I didn't like rehearse the map, so I didn't want to play ultraviolence. But yeah, you have to be careful in any sort of dark environment when it puts chain gunners or other hit scanners on these side rooms. You have to like definitely listen to the speakers because you can be dead in an instant and have no idea why. That's kind of the spooky thing. So yeah, I guess picking up that blue potion indicates maybe that sets off some kind of trigger, or maybe it's just simpler than that. But that shows you that each of those little, I don't even know what you call it, like little thing that I stepped over, like each column will go down, and there's 4. And it'll go down on all 4 of them, so I know how many that I've walked over, which is actually very nice. So there's like good conveyance things done there, even though I didn't know exactly what I was doing. But yeah. I just like the anytime anything is like in really heavy shadow that's in the background, and there's like silhouetted imps or something throwing fireballs at you, and the fireballs illuminate when they come towards you. A lot of mappers have used that effect, but it's always just such a neat effect because they're like a danger to you, but they're not a major danger to you. Like they're a danger if you're not paying attention, but it like kind of illuminates the environment while also still feeling kind of hellish. It's always a good effect when people do it, and it's one of the great things about like, sector-based lighting. This is where I'm going to exit, but I need to... The one thing that I would say this doesn't convey very well, I'll say in a second, but it is a miracle that I've survived, like, up to this point. Like, I think I got like a fireball to the face and I had like 3% health, and somehow I'm still alive and have no ammo left. But this map makes it work because there isn't so many encounters to where I've just fucked myself over here. Because there are plenty of Doom maps where if you don't manage that ammo well, if you get into a certain setting and you're really down to the wire, like there's just no way you can survive. You're just kind of fucked. And that's a hard thing to account for necessarily. I mean, honestly, I don't think it's that hard of a thing, but if you're trying to go for like a limited amount of ammo and sort of balance it that way, it can be a hard thing to do. And I feel like this map does it pretty well to where it's a little scary. I guess that's kind of the survival horror vibe that this is giving off, because it's also more linear, unlike the rest of the set. And you are like running away from enemies a lot more. And there's a lot of enemies sort of in darkness that you can't see. Something like a Revenant becomes much more scary. So there is that kind of survival horror aspect to it, which is pretty cool. So yeah, here I'm just kind of... I don't even know how you describe these. These are like kind of hell caverns. They look like wine caves or something like that. All the environments, even when they're kind of, abstracted Doom versions of environments, kind of look like something potentially realistic, like some kind of old castle in Germany somewhere or something like that in this. So even when they're not like realistic, there is a kind of a real feeling to them, which is interesting. I think that's probably the most unique thing about this particular set to me. And I don't think that the creator of this, the mapper Jaska, I don't think has made anything else in Doom. So perhaps there's kind of like an outsider approach to map design. I think so, because I don't think the combat, like I said, is fine in this set in general. There's some maps that are pretty hard, but it's not the focus like it is for a lot of like Doom modding community stuff, where like each individual encounter has so much weight, and that really is the focus above even the architecture and details. This is much more about the vibe of the places, and the enemies sort of fill that out. It's something that maybe is hard to explain exactly until you play the game, and then you can understand exactly, you know, what that means. You get the vibe from playing it. I just love the shadow of. It's always so surreal to like when you see the skybox texture and it's like completely dark, because the area, there's no reason why that area wouldn't be illuminated for whatever reason, you know. But the effect it creates, it doesn't look bad, even though, you know, someone might be like, oh, that's unrealistic or whatever, because it just creates a cool effect. And yeah, I guess even because I'm playing a GZ Doom, like some of the projectiles, like even that projectile, those will illuminate and make the environment kind of look more interesting. And it's also more scary to see that like sludge. I always thought that they were throwing slime at you, just like some kind of sludge. But I don't think it calls it that in the game. But yeah, so right here, I think I need to walk over all of the platforms. I don't know if I've done that yet, but I'm gonna wander around a bit because this is where it didn't really do a good job of conveying. In the area in the center of that, like, I don't even know, it's kind of like a four-sided, not a square, but, you know, kind of like a, my brain isn't working right now. Whatever kind of shape, but in the center of it, that's where the last thing that you need to step on to activate is. But there was a switch right immediately after that I didn't see, of course. And I needed to hit that in order to go through. Why would you need to hit an extra switch after you've walked over these four when, you know, all the level is done is tell you need to step over these four switches, and it tells you where the exit is. So in that case, like, having the exit sign by the exit actually confuses things more, because it's like, can I exit now? Can I exit now? You keep going back there. So it's not perfect. And yeah, the Doom logic comes back in. Yeah, here's the last area that I needed to go to activate this. And this is where I stepped through and I'm like, oh, I should be able to exit the level. But yeah, I just missed a switch right here, and I'm going to have to come back here in like 5 minutes or 3 or 4 minutes. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to really find something that you can distinguish as Halloween themed within Doom, because the entirety of Doom is kind of Halloween, but it's not really. I never was really clear, you know, like what you would want to consider Halloween or not. Like, obviously horror games are, but there's so many video games that kind of have horror elements to them. Something like, I don't know, BioShock or something. First-person shooter games. And so I guess they could theoretically fit. I mean, Doom basically does, but then there's also the kind of cyber tech elements too, in addition to all the other stuff. It's kind of like Aliens. And would you consider, is Aliens a movie that you would watch during Halloween? Probably not. It's always like kind of more, you know, pagan-y, old world kind of European kind of stuff, which is why I immediately thought of this map, and this set in particular, because it has that vibe. But yeah, it is kind of hard to like, because Doom is mostly pretty straightforward, even when there's confusing stuff with how it conveys stuff there. It doesn't do like survival horror mind tricks on you at the scale that most survival horror games are, or indie horror games, or things like that. The exception being maps like this, but they're generally more unusual, so it's kind of like hard to know how you would categorize that exactly. I do love all these like slime textures. I love all the vines. Just the combination of, there's something beautiful about Doom modding and just the mishmashing of default textures in with stuff that's just blatantly ripped from other games or people from the community have made, and just Frankensteining it together into this kind of thing that doesn't quite look like anything else, but there's just so much resources out there that you can cobble it together into something that looks like coherent and like it was art directed, even though it is just cobbled from various things. And I really like that. It's something you can only really do in the context of a modding community, you know, because in a commercial game you can't really get away with ripping off sprites or ripping off textures unless you're Duke Nukem, I guess. Yeah, Duke Nukem 1 and 2 have some ripped off enemies and textures as far as I remember. But yeah, that is one thing that will always make modding something else, and the fact that like stuff of this scope is still being made, you know, circa 2019 is just kind of mind-blowing to me. It's also like, I remember in the mid 2000s playing a lot of like Z-Doom sets and being like, oh, well, that's a cool idea, but it doesn't really do much with it. It was like, it's always the like cool hallway, you know, very detailed hallways that are actually kind of boring. Whereas now you have more stuff like this, where people are like actually being more bold and applying like art direction here. So yeah, I assume this is some kind of portal effect with Z-Doom, different skies. These are all different kind of areas that you'll end up in the pyramid area later in the game, or in this set, and then this is kind of a more kind of eldritchy old world. I don't know, the effect is really, really cool. And here's where I warped really past here really quick at the beginning of the level. There's some things about this that remind me of a map in Alt called Recall, where it's just like quick narrative bits. In the context of Alt, like the whole set is kind of like that, but so this is kind of an outlier, and which is a little bit of a bummer, but this set is fun for what it is. I mean, it's really like impressive in terms of environmental detail. I haven't really seen anything quite like this before, and that plays like this. So, you know, in the Doom community, there are archetypes, and usually big maps like this equal slaughter maps, but that's not really the case with this one. But anyway, that's the end of Nightmare. You fall into a pit of nightmares, I guess, and then it's back to the usual set. Yeah, I'm gonna hopefully try and do some videos about non-Doom things in the future, but we'll see how that goes. I just wanted to do something real quick for Halloween because it just felt appropriate, I guess. And also, you know, I wanted to give a shout out to this set because it is a lot of fun. I played through it recently, and it's just amazing that stuff like this is still being made. Anyway, this shot will give you a good idea of what the set as a whole kind of looks like. That'll give you a good teaser so you can try it for yourself. Lost Civilization. Anyway, have a good day.